The factory let me go without proof, without warning, just a public accusation after 22 years. But that wasn't the part that broke me. It was the message from my wife. I think it's time we both moved on. My name is Leonard Kessler. I'm 51 years old and I was the senior logistics coordinator at a family-owned manufacturing plant that forgot who kept its floors moving. The text lit up my screen like a punch to the gut. 2 sentences and a screenshot. 15 years of marriage erased in an instant. Dana had moved out, taken $118,000 from our joint account, and already started a new life with someone else. I sat there in the kitchen of our Des Moines condo, my coffee cooling beside me, staring at the words like they might somehow rearrange themselves into something less final. I wasn't surprised, not really. There had been signs, weekend getaways that stretched into full weeks, new clothes she never wore around me, phone calls that stopped the moment I entered the room. I was a forensic accountant. I noticed discrepancies. It was what I did for a living. But I'd ignored them when it mattered most. Maybe that was my first mistake. Or maybe my first mistake had been marrying someone who thought my career was just spreadsheets and boring numbers. I opened my laptop and checked an email account Dana didn't know existed. 3 notifications from my bank's security system blinked back at me. Someone had attempted to change passwords on accounts Dana had never seen. She was thorough. I had to respect that. I typed 2 words in response to her text. Good luck. Then I called my brother. Jason, I said, when he answered. Remember that contingency plan we discussed 5 years ago? There was a pause. You're sure? Yes. She just made her move. He exhaled sharply. All right, let's do it. I hung up and glanced at the wedding photo on the wall. It was the only one in the condo that still had both of us in it. I should have noticed that too. We'd met at a University of Iowa alumni event. I was 38, recently divorced from a short-lived first marriage, focused entirely on building my forensic accounting practice. Dana was 34, vibrant, ambitious, completely uninterested in what I did for a living. I don't need to understand the details, she'd say whenever I tried to explain a case. As long as you make enough for us to live well. We married after a year of dating. I funded her yoga studio from my savings. When she wanted a bigger house in a better neighborhood, I agreed. When she wanted luxury cars and expensive vacations, I nodded and signed the checks. My father had warned me once. We were fixing his deck, and he paused mid-swing. Son, he said carefully, I notice your wife spends a lot of your money. Just make sure she values what you do to earn it. I brushed him off, but the comment stuck with me. 6 years into our marriage, I started quietly restructuring my assets. Nothing illegal, just protective. I created 2 LLCs, established trusts, invested in crypto, and maintained offshore accounts for international clients. Dana knew about our joint checking and savings, but nothing else. She became increasingly involved in fitness influencer circles. Her Instagram followers grew into the thousands. She started taking trips with her wellness community. First weekends, then full weeks. You wouldn't enjoy it, she'd say. It's all yoga talk and juice cleanses. Last Christmas, she forgot my birthday. When I mentioned it the next day, she bought me an expensive watch and said, I've just been so busy with the studio expansion. That night, I finalized the paperwork on my contingency plan. The signs were all there. I just didn't want to see the full picture. The morning after Dana's text, I woke up early and made coffee, same as always. Habits are hard to break, even when your world has collapsed. I logged into my primary financial management system, a custom-built program originally designed for my forensic accounting practice, but adapted for personal use. With a few keystrokes, I activated the contingency protocol Jason and I had designed years earlier. First, I froze all joint accounts and credit cards. Then I triggered a fraud alert on the $118,000 transfer, using my banking contacts to expedite the process. I sent documentation proving financial misconduct to my attorney, along with instructions to file for divorce immediately. Then, I called my mother. Dana's left me, I said simply. She took the money and moved my things out while she was supposedly on vacation. My mother was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry, Leonard. But I can't say I'm surprised, she finally added. What are you going to do? What I've been preparing to do for years. I paused. Protect what's mine. An hour later, my phone lit up with Dana's name. I declined the call. 10 more calls followed, then a text. What the hell did you do? The money's gone and my cards don't work. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to the storage facility listed in her text. Using the code she'd sent, I retrieved 2 boxes of my clothes and my laptop. The rest of my belongings, family photos, books, mementos from my father, were nowhere to be found. That's when something hardened in me. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about 15 years discarded without a second thought. It was about someone thinking they could erase me from my own life. I stopped at a coffee shop and opened my laptop. Using financial databases only available to licensed investigators, I pulled up everything I could find on Trey Harmon, the fitness influencer Dana had been tagging in photos for months. The someone better she'd mentioned. What I found confirmed my suspicions. Trey's gym business was leveraged to the hilt. 3 maxed out business credit cards, a lease he couldn't afford, and Dana had already co-signed on a car loan with him 2 months earlier. I closed my laptop and drove to a hotel. For the first time in years, I felt completely clear about what needed to be done. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. Monday morning, I walked into my office as if nothing had happened. My assistant Valerie looked up, surprised. "Leonard, I thought you'd be taking time off." "Dana called here 3 times already," she said. "She sounded upset, said there was a misunderstanding with your accounts and needed to reach you urgently." I nodded. "If she calls again, tell her to contact my attorney." Before I could settle into my office, Dana escalated from calls to appearing in person. The receptionist buzzed my office. "Your wife is here. She's quite insistent." I sighed and walked to the lobby. Dana stood there, designer sunglasses pushed back on her head, yoga clothes perfectly coordinated. She smiled when she saw me, the same smile she'd used for 15 years when she wanted something. "Leonard," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "there's been a huge misunderstanding with the bank." "You transferred money without authorization," I said quietly. "The bank flagged it as fraud." Her smile faltered. "I'm your wife." "You're my soon-to-be ex-wife who emptied our savings while informing me you'd moved out and found someone new. That's textbook financial misconduct." Her voice dropped to a hiss. "You cannot do this to me. I've already put deposits down on a new place. I've made commitments to Trey Harmon." "Yes, I know all about those commitments." She blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" "You'll find out in discovery." I turned and walked back to my office. The trap was closing, but not around me. That night I couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet. No low hum of Dana's phone buzzing beside her pillow. No creak of floorboards from her late-night pacing when she thought I was asleep. The bed felt larger than usual, emptier, and colder in more ways than one. I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of tap water, not bourbon. Never liked the stuff. The laptop was open in front of me, but I wasn't working. I was looking, old photos. Back when we still smiled for the same camera. Company picnics, holiday parties, a weekend trip to Vermont we barely remembered because we were too busy trying to outwork everyone else. We looked happy. Or at least like we believed we could be. I hovered over the trash icon. Thought about deleting every trace, then thought better of it. I didn't need to erase the past, I just needed to stop pretending it meant something now. My inbox still had her name, pinned from when we used to share finance updates. She used to forward me invoices with little notes like, "Clean this up," or "Your handwriting again." I scrolled back to the beginning. Hundreds of emails. Efficient, director, professional. Only in the early ones did she use emojis. They faded out with time. At 2:12 a.m., I finally closed the lid. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. That had burned out the week I got fired. When I realized the betrayal wasn't just about work, it was personal, but not passionate. It was calculated. She didn't cry when I packed my things. She didn't call. She didn't even ask if I needed help with the rent. She was already gone before I left. Back in our first year at the factory, Dana once stood up for me in a meeting. The CFO was trying to pin a shipping delay on my misrouting. Dana, new and still trying to prove herself, interrupted with a corrected report and said, "Actually, Leonard submitted this on time. Logistics sat on it." I remember the room going silent. I remember thinking, she's got a backbone. I didn't know that one day she'd bend it. Some part of me still wanted to know why. Why she'd make that choice. Why she'd rather align with corporate lies than stand with me, the man she lived with, the man she married. Was it ambition? Survival? Or had I just stopped mattering somewhere along the way? But asking would mean giving her power. and I was done handing that over. I thought about not going to the building the next day, letting the lawyers handle it, letting the system carry me to whatever conclusion it wanted. But something in me knew that I needed to stand there, to look her in the eye, not to shame her, but to remind myself of who she had become. Because for all the years we spent together, the woman who walked into that HR meeting wasn't the same person I married. She smiled too easily when they fired me. She looked relieved. Not conflicted, not cornered. Relieved. Like a weight had been lifted from her conscience. And I had to know. Had she always been like this? Or had something shifted so slowly that I never noticed? I ironed a plain shirt, the one I used to wear on quarterly audit days, no tie, no blazer, just clean lines and enough starch to feel like armor. I arrived early the next morning, waited in the lobby. Security still recognized me, which was funny in a way. Even after being scrubbed from payroll and revoked from the employee directory, the badge scanner still beeped green, a leftover permission, a technical ghost. I stood near the window, hands in my pockets, watching the employees trickle in. Some of them nodded, unsure whether to acknowledge me. Others looked away. One or two had the decency to offer a half smile. Then she walked in. Dana. On time, as always. Clipboard in hand, that same maroon coat she wore to every winter planning meeting. She stopped when she saw me, just half a step, then kept walking. I turned before she could pass. You'll find out in discovery. Her face flickered, not shock, not guilt, just calculation, like someone adjusting the math in her head. What I didn't say was this. I had already spoken to the auditors, the files I had kept, not to protect myself, but to protect the company back when I still cared, were time-stamped, cross-verified, and now handed over to people who didn't need my permission to investigate. They'd find the manipulated inventory counts, the mismatched purchase orders, the sudden uptick in shrinkage during the months I was assigned fewer access credentials. They'd find the report Dana signed, the one she claimed never crossed her desk. She didn't know how many backup systems I had quietly built, or how thorough I was about off-site storage, or that the same man she watched walk out of their lives quietly still had fingerprints all over the infrastructure. I didn't need to raise my voice. The evidence would do that for me. Later that day, I walked past the factory floor. Didn't linger, just passed through. The machines kept humming. Forklifts still beeped in reverse. Life moved on, but I wasn't part of it anymore. And for the first time, that didn't feel like loss. It felt like clarity. The next morning, Dana had rallied mutual friends to her side. My phone filled with messages asking why I was being vindictive and controlling. No one questioned where she'd been the past week or who she'd been with. No one asked about the money she'd taken. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I went to the gym, not Dana's studio or Trey's flashy fitness center, but the small community center where I'd been going for years. I lifted weights until my arms shook, then drove back to my hotel room. The trap was closing, but not around me. 3 days later, my attorney called. "We found something interesting," she said. "Dana's been siphoning money from your joint account for over a year. Small transfers at first, then larger ones to multiple accounts. Some to her personal savings, but most to a business LLC registered to Trey Harmon, almost $80,000 total." I wasn't surprised, but confirmation still felt like a punch to the gut. Dana hadn't just left me for someone else. She'd been planning it for over a year, funding her exit and her new boyfriend's business with my money. That night I received a text from an unknown number. "You need to back off. Dana deserves better than you. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be." Trey Harmon, getting involved directly. Interesting. The next morning I drove to my brother's house. Jason worked in digital security, the perfect complement to my financial expertise. We'd collaborated on cases before, but this was different. "I need everything you can find on Harmon Fitness LLC," I told him. Jason raised an eyebrow. "Legal channels only?" "Right, of course," I smirked. "We're just connecting public dots faster than most people could." 3 hours later, we had our answer. Trey wasn't just in debt, he was underwater. His social media portrayed success, but his business was failing. The new equipment, the expansion, the promotional events, all funded through risky loans and, more recently, Dana's investments. But there was something else, something Dana couldn't have known. "Look at this," Jason said, pointing to his screen. Harmon applied for a small business loan 4 months ago. Used the gym equipment as collateral. That's normal, I said. Yeah, but look who co-signed. I leaned forward. The document showed Dana's signature on a $175,000 equipment loan. She co-signed before she left, Jason said quietly. But here's the kicker. The loan specifies joint responsibility with her spouse. They used your marital status to secure better terms. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, children played, in the yard next door, oblivious to the adult complications of the world. She has no idea what she's done, I said finally, and neither does he. The next morning, I met with my attorney and laid out everything we'd found. I want to move quickly, I told her, before they realize what's happening. She reviewed the documents and nodded. We'll file for emergency asset protection today. The loan fraud alone is enough to freeze everything until the divorce is settled. That afternoon, I drove to Harmon Fitness. The gym was sleek and modern with motivational quotes painted on the walls and Trey's face plastered across the entrance. Inside, 20-somethings in expensive workout gear took selfies between half-hearted sets. Trey spotted me immediately. He was taller in person, with the artificial tan and capped teeth of someone who'd built his career on appearance. He walked over, hand extended, smile perfectly calibrated. "You must be Leonard," he said. "Dana's mentioned you." "I'm sure she has." I didn't take his hand. "We need to talk, privately." His smile faltered, but he led me to his office, glass-walled, visible to everyone but soundproof. "What can I do for you?" he asked, closing the door. I placed a folder on his desk. "This is every financial document connecting you to Dana. Loans, credit cards, leases, all co-signed using our marital assets as security." He picked up the folder cautiously. "I don't understand." "It's simple," I said. "Dana used our marriage to back your business loans. Now we're divorcing, and those guarantees are invalid." The color drained from his face as he flipped through the pages. "These are all legitimate business arrangements between Dana and me." "Maybe," I said, "but the banks approved them based on our combined assets and income, assets she no longer has access to." He closed the folder. "What do you want?" "Nothing from you," I said. "I just thought you should know what's coming." His voice hardened. "Dana said you were wealthy. That money wasn't an issue for you." "Money's never been the issue," I said. "Trust was." I stood up to leave, but paused at the door. "One more thing. When Dana moved out, she took some items of sentimental value to me. Family photos, my father's watch, things money can't replace." He stared at me for a long moment. "I'll see what I can do." I nodded and left. A month later, I moved out of the hotel and into a small house near downtown Des Moines. Nothing fancy, just a craftsman with good bones that needed some work. The kind of project that would keep my hands busy and my mind occupied during the evenings. I heard through mutual friends that Dana had moved to Colorado to start over. Her Instagram showed mountain views and inspirational quotes about new beginnings. Trey's gym had been sold to a national chain, and he'd relocated to Miami to expand his brand. Neither of them mentioned what had happened. People rarely advertised their failures. My brother Jason stopped by one Saturday to help me install new cabinets in the kitchen. "Heard anything from Dana?" he asked as we measured for the hinges. "No," I said, "and I don't expect to." "You could have taken her for everything," he said. "The fraud charges alone would have ensured that." I shrugged. "What would be the point? She's no longer my problem." We worked in comfortable silence for a while. The rhythm of measuring, cutting, and mounting created a meditative state, something I hadn't realized I needed until now. "I'm thinking of taking some time off," I said eventually. "Maybe drive up to Minnesota, do some fishing at the cabin." Jason grinned. "Dad would like that. You haven't been there since he passed." That evening, after Jason left, I sat on my back porch with a glass of bourbon. The neighborhood was quiet, with only the occasional dog bark or child's laugh breaking the silence. It was different from the upscale community Dana had insisted on. More real, somehow. I thought about the last 15 years. How I'd allowed someone else to define my life, my worth. How I'd noticed the signs but chosen to ignore them. How, when the moment came, I'd been prepared because some part of me had always known this day would arrive. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt free. The next morning I called my office and told them I'd be taking 2 weeks off. Then I packed my truck, locked up the house, and headed north. No itinerary, no expectations. Just the open road, and for the first time in years, no invisible ledger of resentments to balance. The next day, a courier delivered a box to my hotel. Inside were the missing photos, my father's watch, and other personal items, no note included. That same afternoon, my attorney confirmed the emergency asset protection had been granted. All shared assets would remain frozen until the divorce was finalized. I logged into my financial management system and reviewed the alerts. Dana had attempted to access our frozen account 17 times in the past 24 hours. She'd also tried to open a new credit line using our home as collateral. Denied. My phone lit up with her name again. This time I answered. "What have you done?" she demanded, voice shaking. "The bank called in Trey's loans, all of them. They're seizing the equipment tomorrow." "That's unfortunate," I said calmly. "This is vindictive, Leonard. You're destroying him to get back at me." "No, Dana," I replied. "I'm not doing anything to him. I'm simply protecting myself from fraud. You used our marriage to secure his loans without my knowledge or consent. That's illegal." There was a pause. "We can work this out," she said, voice softening suddenly. "Come home. We'll talk." 15 years of marriage, and she still thought I could be manipulated. That easily. "There's nothing to work out," I said. "The divorce will proceed. The fraud investigation will continue. And Trey will learn an expensive lesson about due diligence." I ended the call and blocked her number. That night I slept better than I had in months. 3 weeks later, I sat in a conference room as Dana and her attorney arrived for our court-ordered mediation. She looked tired. The designer outfit and perfect makeup couldn't hide the strain. Her attorney spoke first. "My client is willing to be reasonable about the division of assets, despite the aggressive tactics employed thus far." My attorney smiled politely. "That's good to hear, because there's been a development." She slid a document across the table. "The bank has completed its fraud investigation. They've determined that Dana forged Leonard's signature on multiple loan documents, using their marital assets as collateral without his knowledge." Dana's attorney skimmed the document, face paling. "We'll need time to review this." "But you should know," my attorney continued, "that the bank has already referred the matter to the district attorney. This meeting is a courtesy before criminal charges are filed." Dana stared at me, eyes wide. "Criminal charges? Leonard, you can't be serious." I met her gaze steadily. "I didn't file the charges. The bank did. That's what happens when you commit loan fraud." Her attorney whispered something in her ear. She shook her head vehemently. "If Ms. Bowman is willing to sign our proposed settlement agreement today," my attorney continued, "Leonard is prepared to provide a statement to the bank that could mitigate the criminal implications. He wouldn't press charges for the theft of personal property or the unauthorized transfer from the joint account." I watched as Dana's carefully constructed world collapsed. She'd expected anger, jealousy, perhaps even begging. She hadn't expected consequences. "The settlement is generous," I said quietly. "You keep your yoga studio, which was always profitable. You keep your car and personal belongings. You receive no alimony and assume responsibility for the debts you incurred in my name." "And Trey?" she asked, voice barely audible. My attorney replied, "Mr. Harmon's financial issues are his own problem. But without your husband's assets backing those loans, I understand the bank has already begun repossession proceedings." Dana signed the papers without further argument. As we left the conference room, she caught my arm. "I never thought you'd fight back like this," she said. "You always just went along with everything." "That was my choice," I replied, "just like this was yours." I walked away without looking back. A month later, I moved out of the hotel and into a small house near downtown Des Moines. Nothing fancy, just a craftsman with good bones that needed some work. The kind of project that would keep my hands busy and my mind occupied during the evenings. I heard through mutual friends that Dana had moved to Colorado to start over. Her Instagram showed mountain views and inspirational quotes about new beginnings. Trey's gym had been sold to a national chain, and he'd relocated to Miami to expand his brand. Neither of them mentioned what had happened. People rarely advertise their failures. My brother Jason stopped by one Saturday to help me install new cabinets in the kitchen. "Heard anything from Dana?" he asked as we measured for the hinges. "No," I said, "and I don't expect to." "You could have taken her for everything," he said. "The fraud charges alone would have ensured that." I shrugged. What would be the point? She's no longer my problem. We worked in comfortable silence for a while. The rhythm of measuring, cutting, and mounting created a meditative state, something I hadn't realized I needed until now. I'm thinking of taking some time off, I said eventually. Maybe drive up to Minnesota, do some fishing at the cabin. Jason grinned. Dad would like that. You haven't been there since he passed. That evening, after Jason left, I sat on my back porch with a glass of bourbon. The neighborhood was quiet, with only the occasional dog bark or child's laugh breaking the silence. It was different from the upscale community Dana had insisted on. More real, somehow. I thought about the last 15 years. How I'd allowed someone else to define my life, my worth. How I'd noticed the signs, but chosen to ignore them. How, when the moment came, I'd been prepared, because some part of me had always known this day would arrive. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt free. The next morning, I called my office and told them I'd be taking 2 weeks off. Then I packed my truck, locked up the house, and headed north. No itinerary, no expectations. Just the open road, and for the first time in years, no invisible ledger of resentments to balance.